Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be getting green through and through by another fucking Robin. This is Chapter 30. The night is breezeless, odd, especially for the time of year, but Damien refuses to look the gift horse in the mouth. He is grateful for the lack of wind because even though he, as much as he loathes to admit it, inherited father's flair for dramatics, and therefore adores the way his spiked cape fans out like wings, he is well aware of the advantage of a smaller silhouette, of stealth. And stealth is especially important at a time like this, for Damien is trying to evade his father. They're in the fashion district, not quite the prime district of Gotham in which to lose Batman. The buildings have ample height differences, and sure, the flashing billboards are an adequate sensory distraction, but the buildings are all glass, and the streets well lit, and the alleyways wide. It isn't ideal, far inferior to the City Hall district with its spires and dark stone within, which his black cape is easily lost, and his father is easily distracted with brooding atop a gargoyle. But simultaneously, it is certainly better than somewhere like the Bowery, where father refuses to let him out of his sight. He mentally clicks his tongue, as if Damien couldn't easily defeat an incompetent brute such as Todd. But Damien must overcome these obstacles. The harsh impediment of Batman's all-seeing gaze, his protectiveness. Damien shudders at the sentiment and pulls his cape tight around his shoulders, like a haughty raven smoothing down ruffled feathers. Damien is in no need of protection. He is Ibn al-Kafash. He is Robin. Clearly what he needs to be is rid of the ever-looming threat of Brown's blackmail. And to do that, he must escape father's watch and catch that supposed spider guy. Damien had already caught snippets of the pair parading around the skies in his outrageously gaudy red monstrosity costume. But somehow, in ways that are completely beyond the modern comprehension of science, the living flare managed to evade him. Damien must atone for this embarrassment. He ducks behind an air conditioning unit, catching his breath. He certainly must have lost father by now, employing everything in his League of Assassins toolbox. Well, everything minus the lethal methods. And the domestic terrorism. And public unrest. Okay, so maybe he's not employing every tool in his toolbox, but that's good. He's grown since his arrival in Gotham. He's become better, kinder, and his family is proud of him. Robin, why are you running from me? Damien resents all previous statements that, in a way, implied positive feelings towards his father and family. He hates them. He hates them all and wished misfortune on all of their houses. I know you're a fan of hide and seek when a civilian, but in the field it's imperative that I'm alerted to where you are and, if it is your desire, and a quiet night, your wish to play games. I am not playing. I'm simply testing your situational awareness, which was subpar, by the way. Damien despises the uptick of father's lips and disbelieving eyebrows raised his way, and intends to make his disdain clear with a snarl, and perhaps a very manly and intimidating screech, when father holds up a hand and raises the other to his ear, listening to the police frequency, and leaving Damien to seethe in silence. Understood. Black Bat will be on scene shortly, and Robin and I have an ETA of 5 minutes. 5 minutes? If father thinks that Kane will be on the scene shortly, then whatever situation that is transpiring up near the Bowery, a considerable distance away from their current location. Which means that if father thinks they'll arrive in 5 minutes, then he intends to use the Batmobile, which is usually reserved for emergencies. Conclusion, there is some sort of emergency event in the Bowery, likely a rogue attack if the recent breakout of Joker, Isley, Cobblepot, and Linz is anything to go by. And father sees this as urgent, likely disqualifying the likes of Cobblepot and Isley, who have either reformed, partially at least, or whose plans takes weeks of planning to dismantle. Damien finds himself hoping that the culprit is Linz, though Firefly's attacks are extremely destructive, and the man himself is quite mad and certainly cannot be reasoned with. Damien has been through his attacks often enough. His suit is fireproof, he has a respirator, he knows that his job is to evacuate civilians. With Joker, there is never a plan, at least not one that withstands the first few minutes of the confrontation, and Damien is not embarrassed to admit that the sight of the man is enough to make his skin crawl. Batman takes off northwards, giving Damien no more than a firmly spoken Robin as an indication to follow. He rolls his eyes but obliges, releasing the grapple from his gun and taking off after his father. Damien feels shameful for hoping the culprit of the Bowery attack was Linz, guilt and self-disgust curling in his stomach as rising flames come into view through the Batmobile's tinted windows. Damian doesn't fiddle, doesn't tap with his feet like Richard, or drum with his fingers like Drake, but as he fixes a rebreather over his face, he likes to ignore the way his feet rub over each other anxiously, the way he avoids looking at the orange fire flittering through his domino mask. It's not fiddling, just an anxious sort of repetitive motion. Yes, that sounds far more manageable and refined. Damian continues these motions all the way to the scene while mentally checking off his list. Fireproof gloves? Check. Rebreather? Check. Emergency beacon? Check. He knows he won't be engaging directly with Lens, his father adamant that only himself and other bats with completely skin-covering costumes are permitted to engage directly with the pyromaniac, meaning that until Kane, Todd, or Fox arrive on scene, Father will have to deal with the fire-wielding madman himself. Had Damon still been the insecure and arrogant boy he had been upon his arrival in Gotham, he would be upset over being delegated to dealing with evacuation rather than partaking in the fighting. As it stands, however, Damon understands the vital importance of his role, understands the sheer amount of trust and belief being placed on him when his father asks him to ensure the safety of civilians. Fireproof gloves, rebreather, and emergency beacons, rope, ceramic knives, and stone doorstops. The Batmobile pulls to a stop, the wheels and engines as smooth as ever, the motion jolting Damien out of his stupor nonetheless. The doors lift and he's out, black and yellow cape streaming out behind him into the flames. The building collapses almost immediately after their arrival. Damien, thankfully, was outside before that. He was escorting people out of the building via the fire escape, hurrying them along. It was all he could do, unable to find a single person inside. The top floor was completely engulfed in flame and utterly unstoppable, so it isn't beyond reason that there could still have been people trapped inside, but the floor was burnt away, foundation crumbling. Attempting to go inside and recover victims or bodies would have brought the whole complex down. Well, brought it down faster. The other floors were completely deserted, not a single person in any room, not even an animal. The picture was altogether eerie, empty homes cast in thick orange light and ravaged by flame. Not only that, but the places were torn apart, damaged beyond the type of fire can cause. Doors torn off hinges and ripped to scraps, tables overturned and whole pieces of debris in physically impossible locations. All this points to the presence of an unknown metahuman most likely, certainly physically enhanced in some manner. He asks the residents of the building about the mysterious interloper. They describe a young man in an ash-covered hoodie and a face mask, large white eyes visible through the smoke. They describe hands covered in welts and sores gently helping them stand and pointing towards the fire escape. One older woman describes him as a comforting presence and recounts him mumbling incoherent reassurances to her while he carries her to the ground. Another says he was a terrifying aspect, disembodied eyes, and smoke made solid, breaking down doors with supernatural strength. Soon, claims start overlapping, the figure allegedly both scrawny and immensely large, talkative and silent, covered in burns and pristine amid flames. The chatter sounds remarkably like the rumors first spread when Father appeared on the scene, and as such, Damien does not take one opinion as truth. The talking is only silenced when the building itself collapses, tons of concrete debris falling down and spewing dust and smoke outward. Damien looks over his group of stragglers, each one thankfully with a rebreather strapped to their face, and hurries them away from the debris field around the collapsed building. The ashy, dusty, smoke-filled air is so thick that he doesn't see the figure kneeling on the ground further down the alley, doesn't see the soot-stained spider emblem on their chest. He regroups with Batman after ensuring that every member of his small group is receiving the medical attention they require, and after picking up a small black cat with a nasty burn along one flank from the street, he is engaged in conversation with an EMT, a frazzled-looking young woman, anxiously fiddling with an unopened water bottle, and, notably, seems entirely unharmed. He doesn't cease his questioning in the face of Damien's arrival, barely acknowledging it besides a subtle double-take at the sight of the feline in his arms. Were they inside the building? I don't know. He was here before we arrived, clearing the top floor. This must be the mysterious metahuman. Damien is personally betting that it is the spider guy, but Father taught him not to jump to conclusions. And he cleared 3 more before you got here, maybe 20, 30 minutes total? And you say that he disappeared before receiving water? That he only had at most 4 minutes of oxygen? Yeah, she says, tone dejected. Father glances down at him, asking with masked eyes if he has any additions or deductions to make known. The 5th floor residents have varying accounts. Many described the meta as unaffected by the flames, but an equal number recount burns, coughing, and straining. It's likely that the smoke inhalation affected him, but to a lesser degree than a non-enhanced individual, and as such, he was able to flee the scene. However, we should still canvass the area, as it is within reason that his movements would be incoherent, erratic, and trackable. Father nods and waves away the EMT. She jogs away, guilt and relief wearing on her face. As soon as she's out of earshot, Damon produces 2 vials from his belt, one containing a blood-stained scrap of fabric he retrieved from the jagged remnants of a doorframe, the other containing a sample of the webs that were holding the fire escape to the wall. Father takes them both with a quiet, "Well done, Robin," and places them inside his own belt, gazing upwards all the while. "Father?" he questions, unused to the clench of his jaw and twinge in his neck muscles, the slight nasal rasp in his voice. "There's a new vigilante in Gotham." He keeps his gaze skyward. Damien follows his eyeline and raises his eyebrows at what he sees there. Lens, mask smashed, guns hanging limply, wings at odd angles, and, most pressingly, cocooned in webbing and suspended from the side of an adjacent building. Is he breathing? Father takes a worryingly long time to answer, but eventually responds with curt, "Yes." Damien lets out a breath. He's thankful that Lens isn't dead, mainly, but the likelihood of his family increasing by 1 has just risen tenfold. The return to the Batcave is silent, Kane usurping the front seat and shunting Damien and the newly acquired cat to the back. She had arrived on the scene uncharacteristically late, with the gunshot wound bleeding sluggishly in her thigh. Damien would have been indignant with rage, had she not informed them that she had been dealing with a gang shootout near the hill. As soon as they pull up in the cave, Father is out, cowl hanging like a hood at the nape of his neck, making a beeline to the Bat computer. He and Kane follow his lead and wander behind him. She asks him what Father is up to, and he agrees to tell her as long as she lets Pennyworth patch up her leg. She obliges with a fond eye roll, barely even limping. Damien despises that he cannot cover his concern around Kane. He recounts his daring venture into the burning building, the acquisition of Bassett, a fitting name for such a loving, resilient feline, and the stories of the mysterious Spider-Man on the scene. At the mention of Spider Guy, she perks up, startling Bassett from her curled-up position on Kane's lap, and practically sprints over to her father is hunched over the Bat computer, presumably running the samples they obtained. She hooks her chin over his shoulder and gasps at what she sees. Damien rushes over to see what her apparent concern is about. "Well, is he well? Okay?" "I'm sorry, Cass, but we don't know." Cass starts pacing, scrap of soot and blood-stained blue spandex clutched in her hand. "Miss Cassandra, how do you know this vigilante element?" Pennyworth questions. "Spiderman, rooftop, friendly, nice, friendly." She repeats those words over and over, growing more and more frantic and unreadable. "Worry not, he is most likely alive." Damien attempts to reassure, placing a tentative hand on her arm. "Damien is right. We canvassed the area, you even aiding us for part of the search. We found no trace of him, so he was likely coherent enough to find a safe space to rest and recuperate." Kane doesn't seem to like that answer, so Damien assures her. "If he were in trouble, trust I would have found his body. I am extremely observant." Cass gives him a wan but warm smile. He counts it as a win. "Now that that's been dealt with," Pennyworth interjects, "I'm afraid I will have to request the young master and miss to give our newest addition a bath. I will not have another feline track soot into the manor." "Yes, Pennyworth," Damien says as he nods dutifully. "Okay, Alfie," Kane choruses, following him up the stairs. Both of them clock the concern and protective territorial clench to Father's jaw and make eye contact. A silent agreement to warn the rest of the family. Father knows it's Spider-Man, and he doesn't approve. Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 30 of Green Through by Another Fucking Robin. I hope you guys liked it, and see you next chapter.